Hello, my name is Colin O'Reilly, and this is The Colin O'Reilly Show. This podcast will discuss topics ranging from UFOs to artificial intelligence, science, and the paranormal. Each week, I will have on a different guest for a different topic. This is my first episode, and this week's guest is author and paranormal researcher Preston Dennett. Preston has written over 30 books and 100 articles on UFOs and the paranormal. His research and writing has been translated into many different languages for a truly global audience. He's taught classes on various paranormal subjects and he lectures across the United States. I also say the word fascinating 1 million times during this interview. All righty, Preston. Thank you so much for being here today. So I just wanted to start off, as we just spoken a bit about before I started recording. Yeah, you've written over 20 books. You're one of the most respected UFO researchers in America, if not the world. And I would just love to hear what you think about some of the stories that have been going on in the news lately, the quote unquote as we spoke about, alleged UAPs that have been shot down. Some of the Senate hearings I actually just saw late last night on Reddit. They said Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is going to be heading up new UAP hearings in a few months in the Senate. Yeah, I guess I would just love to get your take on it, and thank you for being here.
Yeah. Hey, my pleasure. It's an honor. Thanks, Colin. Yeah, it's pretty interesting times for UFOs, I must say. Having been in this field for a long time, I really never expected this to go into the mainstream at all. There were certainly rumors about disclosure way back when I got in this field in 1986, it was. And people were talking about, oh, there's going to be disclosure. And of course, it never came.
Yeah.
And, there is a cover up. It's demonstrable. It's been that way from the beginning. And yeah, some really interesting developments recently.
And I agree. I was born in 1976, and when I was 4 or 5, I started, reading everything I could, all those Time Life books about UFOs,
Right.
pictures, and I've been fascinated since then. And yeah, I never really imagined we'd be at this place now. And it's weird because people like, I mean, you know way more about it than me, but just even me as an armchair fan, I think all UFO fans, we all kind of think we've all known the government knows something. And now it kind of feels like they know more than they're telling us, but there is that seems like the slow, concerted sort of drip effort, sort of drop by drop, to sort of get some of this information out to the public.
Yeah, yeah. I I I totally agree. It's really actually in some ways shocking and surprising to see this being discussed in Congress, to have congressional hearings, to hear senators talking about it. I mean, it appeared on 60 Minutes. It actually did a pretty good episode talking about pilot sightings. So, yeah, I think that is good news, certainly. It's brought a lot of new people into the field.
Why do you think they are releasing this information now? What do you think's making them change their tune?
I wish I knew what goes on in their little minds. I don't mean to be denigrating, but I'm angry at the cover up. I think there's some reasons behind this for sure. I am not sure. I'm not convinced that they're doing it for our benefit. Ultimately, I think it's for their benefit. I really feel like what we're seeing in terms of disclosure is just the tip of the iceberg. They're not talking about everything they know, that's for sure. We're talking about simple sightings. And I honestly think they're doing it because they have to. Their hand has been forced. I think we're at a point now where there's enough evidence in the public arena to prove that this is a real subject. And if they don't take steps towards disclosure, they will 100% lose control of the narrative and become not credible, not relevant. I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? We're at the point now where if they don't say something, they're gonna look like idiots. And that's
Yeah,
kind of where it's at.
that's how yeah, it's fascinating to me that there just seems to be, yeah, such an aversion. They will do the government will do anything, it seems like, to just not acknowledge this or to discuss it in any way. I wonder, I mean, I know 1,000 times less than somebody like you who researches this stuff professionally, but just as sort of like an armchair UFO fan, I think it started with John Podesta, who that White House advisor, he worked under the Clintons. He was like a senior domestic advisor. And then he worked for Obama. He was Obama's campaign chair and then one of his domestic advisors. And he had always been, I guess, pushing this stuff. I don't know if you remember some of those Russia emails that got leaked of Hillary's, and he was mentioned in some of those emails of really pushing disclosure. And it seems like when Obama got into office, that's when a lot of this started. At least I think, like the New York Times articles and things like that. I wonder how much some of just the younger generation of politicians thought, we should try to get this stuff out. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but yeah, it seems like there's some sort of momentum or effort or reason. I figure we're either going to get invaded or they just the advent of advance of technology and cameras everywhere. Or I don't know.
I don't think we're going to get invaded. The ETs have been around forever.
Yeah, no,
I don't.
totally. That's it.
The
And
evidence
hopefully
really
they
doesn't
would tell us
support.
more quick if we were getting invaded. Hopefully they would just cut to the chase.
Yeah, and
But yeah,
I
no,
think there's probably a lot of politicians out there and people within government who are not only perfectly aware of what's going on. I know there's a lot who aren't, who are woefully ignorant, but I'm sure that there are many who are uh, up to date on what's going on and do know that this is a real subject and do want disclosure.
yeah,
So, but again, we're dealing with a concerted cover up. It's very interesting because the Pentagon releases this report. Initially, it was a couple of years ago with 144 sightings, which they could refuse to say were extraterrestrial. They did use the word. You could tell it kind of hurt them to say it. They're like, oh, we think it's technology, maybe. We can't prove that. It
yeah,
could be Chinese, it could be Russian, maybe it's even us. That made me laugh out loud when they said that, because if anyone should know that it's us, it would be them. uh,
yeah.
and to say, well, one's a balloon, we're pretty sure about that. Like,
And now they're saying, I guess, shut my door for my cat. I guess the Pentagon this week had confirmed that they have pictures of the quote unquote three UAPs that they'd shot down over that weekend that is separate from that Chinese balloon, but they said they had pictures of the wreckage, but that it's classified. They won't be releasing any of it.
yeah, I bet.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that was a very interesting couple of weeks there when this became front page news and they're actually using the term UFOs and UAPs as well, but they actually called them UFOs, which was curious to me because
Well,
they,
during that press conference, I don't know if you saw it it was one of the generals after I think it was like the third shoot down, and he said, we're calling these objects on purpose and not balloons. And then a few minutes later, he said, "And any other questions, I would refer to the intelligence agencies." And I thought that was so interesting. It seemed like you could kind of tell. It seems like there's this schism or sort of a fight behind the scenes, out of the public eye, between those who want to get this topic out there and those who do not. Um,
yeah, it's a curious development because this just stinks of propaganda to me, honestly. How can we go for decades and decades and decades with pretty, much loads of UFO activity, and then suddenly they're shooting them down? That makes zero sense. I am
yeah,
not even remotely convinced that these are genuine UFOs for a
and
couple of reasons.
or you're convinced that the UAP that the ones they shot down are not UFOs?
Yes. Yeah, I don't think they're genuine UFOs. I suspect they're probably government drones of some kind, perhaps from a foreign government. But as far as being actual ET craft or genuine UFOs, no, I highly doubt it. There's just no way. For one, I don't think they would tell us. They have a long, long history of never telling us. But the primary reason would be we don't have the capability to shoot these things down. They
Yeah,
can move far faster than anything we have, and that includes missiles. they would see that coming from a mile away. They're telepathic. They know when they're going to be shot at. There's just no way that these are genuine UFOs. They don't display the so-called observables, which by that I mean, hovering in place, darting around at right angles, moving at thousands of miles per hour. We don't see any of that. These things are just some lazily moving over. Some did say they were controlled, but these show all the markers of, drones. I don't think they're genuine UAPs at all. They would never in a
Yeah.
million years tell us.
That makes a lot of sense. And I don't know what to think because I agree with everything you're saying. And then my only counter argument would just be I think at some of the altitudes they were finding these and the duration. I wonder if for drone's ability. But also I agree with what you're saying is why would they tell us anything? But then I also wonder why are they keeping them classified? Why are they released that one Chinese balloon photo? But they said they won't release any pictures or any information on these other three objects. But yeah, I guess they could be Chinese or Russian or
Yeah, it's weird to me there because what we have is just a bunch of talk, zero evidence to back it up. And honestly, what I think this is my opinion based on, having looked into it and kind of keeping my finger on the pulse of other investigators and what's going on in the field.
yeah,
I think this is propaganda leading towards the false flag operation that there's a lot of buzz about. And by
yeah,
that, I mean our government is painting a false narrative of an ET threat and have been doing it for a while. And I think, well, according to the false flag and the people who are looking into that, our government is going to stage a fake ET invasion. And this is sort of the beginning steps of it. That's what I suspect is going on here. Obviously, I can't prove it. I've spent most of my research really interviewing firsthand witnesses and contactees. I'm not really a government guy. I don't
yeah.
look into all the machinations that they do. Uh, I don't think this is even remotely genuine disclosure. I don't think those are actual ET craft. I think this is all propaganda.
It kind of feels that way. Um, yeah, I wonder because I see the same rumors you do online. Like everyone, it seems like, is talking about a potential false flag. But I even wonder, that's what makes me wonder if maybe there would be a real invasion. Because I wonder how would the government perpetrate that? Like realistically, could they manufacture a false flag? Like it seemed like the actual invasion of Iraq was so difficult, and that was only 20 million people. Like if they did something globally or nationally, it just seems like it would be so hard, and the deception would be so difficult. I wonder if maybe some of the I mean, I don't know. I'm just totally spitballing and guessing. I wonder if some of the UAP that have been showing up recently or the government's been disclosing are different from earlier visitors and that they're concerned maybe these guys will invade, but I don't know. I mean, what could we do even if they did invade? Nothing.
Well, I will
Nothing.
say one thing from a viewpoint of interviewing a lot of contactees. I know it's not ETs.
Yeah.
There's no danger of ETs invading us or taking over. That's not their agenda. The evidence speaks to that very strongly. As far as the government, yes, I think we do have some of this technology, and it has been reverse engineered to a certain degree. I point to the TR-3B. There's other craft that I think would very much mimic a UFO. And yeah, they have the capability to fly around and do some really dastardly things. Whether they're able to, do it believably, I don't think so. I think the people are smarter than that. They know, because I've looked at several surveys on Facebook and other places. Do you think the ETs are here to take over or invade? And most people don't. They know that this is not a nefarious phenomena. It's the opposite. They're basically our friends. They have an agenda of healing, of teaching, of guiding, of waking people up. It's our governments. Those are the ones we have to be afraid of. So yeah, I think they have the potential to do some real damage. And this is something we have to watch out for. But I hope and I pray that people don't think for a second that this is ETs.
Yeah.
And how you could tell is if these things do start shooting at you, that is government. That is not ETs. They
Yeah.
do not do that.
Do you think there could be like an AI, sort of some AI offshoot where some of these craft or inhabitants could be different than like regular biological UFOs or aliens?
Yeah, I
Pretty out
think
there at this
we have done a lot of research into AI here. Secret government, the cabal, one percenters, call them what you will, the folks behind the cover up have a black budget. They have been putting an enormous amount of time, money, and energy into this subject. This is something that's taken very seriously at high levels of government. And I'm
Yeah.
worried about it. Yeah, AI is I mean, even Elon Musk has been kind of sounding the alarm about it.
I
Uh,
stayed up till 3 a.m. last night. I had to make myself log off. I'm addicted to Chat GPT, that AI program. It is fascinating. Um, yeah, it is. I can't even imagine where it will be in a couple of years. It's
yeah, it's frightening. I mean, we know now that our privacy has been completely, I mean, it's gone.
yeah, I don't think there's any
I,
such thing
I
as
mean, our cell phones are listening to us, our TVs. If you just mention something, next thing you know, you're getting commercials on it. It's
yeah.
insane. They
And
are
I
watching.
swear it reads my brain. I swear on Instagram sometimes I won't even if say anything, it won't email anything, and it will just start showing me ads for things I've thought about. I don't know how it does that, but
Yeah,
um
well, we have AI that can read lips to 97% accuracy,
wow.
facial recognition, and that's what we know. So if
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me one bit. I can't speak to this with any real authority, but from what I've heard, yeah, they do have technology that is what we would call psychotronic, can read your mind.
Oh,
And
I believe it. I just saw they did a study using Chat GPT to read brain scans and with like 80-90% accuracy reproduce images of things that people were thinking of just by reading their brain waves.
yeah, and implant telepathic messages, that sort of thing too. So even if you
Yeah.
see a UFO, a so-called UFO hovering over you and starts, giving you mental messages, pay very close attention to what it's saying, because if it's negative or fear-based, that would probably be AI from our government. Uh, I'm real worried about it. This is serious stuff. People have died over this subject in terms of trying to release information and break down the UFO cover up.
Yeah.
It's no joke. This is,
Yeah.
while they are talking about UFOs and sightings, they're suspiciously silent on the many landing trace cases, the many, many cases of people who claim to have direct contact. They laughed over the Roswell report during the congressional hearings. They were asked flat out, like, there's no Roswell myth. There's nothing to that. They lied through those congressional hearings. It was infuriating.
Yeah. I'm excited to see the new Senate hearings with Senator Gillibrand. I think she'll be more forceful. And I don't know if you saw that clip where she asked Secretary of Defense, I think his name Lloyd Austin, and she tried to get him to confirm that public office Arrow. I don't know if you've heard of. It's like the new
Yeah,
Pentagon UAP office, and he was kind of trying to dodge and wouldn't really confirm that they would be fully funded. And she really held his feet to the fire. And it seems like, and her and Marco Rubio just sent a letter to the Pentagon that they made public. I think it was a week or two ago, saying, kind of calling out the military, saying, "Why haven't you released these files yet? We've been asking. You guys are still playing, sneaky, whatever with this stuff." Yeah, I hope someday we learn why they've been so secretive about this. It's fascinating.
yeah,
You talk to a
yeah.
lot of experience. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the Arrow office, if I'm correct, that stands for the All Domain Anomaly Reconnaissance Office. I think that's
Yes.
what it is.
Yes.
I looked into their goals, and which was, you know, I think 6 steps initially to basically survey what's going on in terms of recognizing where activity is and what's going on. But there was one step in there where they want to govern UFO activity and obtain the technology. So there's
Well, it
just no
seems like the
way.
Biden administration has now set up a public office to run in parallel with that, but I guess on their own to study UAP. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, it's laughable to me that they're forming all these organizations when we know as UFO researchers, and I think even the public believes this because this is what Gallup polls have shown. Uh, the true study of this subject is going on in secret. These are all fronts,
Yeah.
like Project Blue Book and the Condon Committee and Robertson Panel, all of whom, by the way, found that there's absolutely nothing to this subject. If you think you saw a UFO, it's one of three things. It's either a hoax, it's a hallucination, or a misperception. And there's absolutely no threat to national security. That has been the party line for decades. And
Yeah.
now they're reversing it.
Yeah,
A
that's what's
little
so
bit.
interesting is forever they just said there's nothing to it, it's nonsense, it doesn't exist. And then like 2017, it just turned on a dime and they said, nope, there's something here. What do you, when you talk to the experiencers and the abductees that you've interviewed and researched with, do they follow these news stories? Are they following these developments or the hearings or any of this?
Oh, certainly. I mean, I think some more than others. But the only real benefit, I think, honestly, to these congressional hearings and this being pushed into the mainstream is it's causing a lot of people to take a look at this. It's brought a lot of new people into the field, certainly.
Yeah. My
But
whole life, I was crazy UFO guy, and the past couple weeks, everyone I've ever met's been emailing me like, "What's going on?" Especially during that weekend with the balloon and the UAPs getting shot down. It seemed like it was reaching like a fever pitch, and it seemed like Biden didn't want to come out and talk. He took a while, and there was a time I believe it was last year where President Biden was in South Korea with their president doing like a joint news conference, and it was a few days after President Obama former President Obama had spoken about the validity or existence of UAPs, and a reporter asked Biden there in this big press conference in Korea, said, President Obama said this. What do you think about it? And Biden just shut it down and just said, I think you should ask Obama again. And he just said, press conference over, and literally just gets away from the podium and, walks out of the room as fast as he can. I thought it was so interesting to see. Yeah, I wonder if Biden's part of that conservative caucus or coalition behind the scenes that still wants to keep some of this stuff under wraps.
yeah, well, from what I understand, there are researchers who've looked really deeply into this. Our presidents aren't in the loop, not for the most part. I mean, while they are sort of informed about the subject to a degree, they're not the ones who are really even running the country. It's the upper levels of the military, it's the Pentagon, it's the highest levels of the Navy and the Army and the Air Force, it's corporations, it's
Yeah.
a military industrial complex. These are the people who are behind the cover up.
It
Uh,
seems now that presidents are just figureheads, that they are picked by groups of special interests.
yeah,
Uh,
and we have yet to have a sitting president, really, or a sitting head of state, just flat out say, this is real. If you have, in foreign countries, Mexican presidents, the Brazilian president, of course, the former defense minister of Canada, Paul Hellyer,
yeah.
made very provocative statements.
I'm surprised Trump never said anything. It seemed like he was almost going to. I don't know if you saw that Roswell weird interview he did with like his son.
Right.
He kind
Yeah,
of
I was
gave
really hoping because he's definitely a little bit of a maverick. I thought if anyone will just, go against the party line, it would be him. Uh,
Yeah, it's like the only thing he won't stop talking about. Yeah, it's like he talked about everything else but that. I was like, come on. Um,
which goes to show that there is still a cover up. I'm telling you, we cannot look to our governments for answers on this subject. It would be a huge mistake. They have
what do you
lied
think?
since day one and are still lying.
What do you
Those
think about?
congressional hearings were
Yeah,
a travesty.
they were. What do you think though about some of our senators and things like that? Do you think they are separate or different from sort of the military industrial establishment and sort of being able to get answers? Do you know, or who's that one congressman? He's that super conservative guy, Tim Burchett.
Yeah, there's a number of them talking about Marco Rubio, Kirsten
Yeah. Mark
Gillibrand.
Warner, Senator Warner's really been, sounds like he's been pushing. Uh,
Remember Senator Reed of Nevada was pushing.
and then
Uh,
there was I can't remember the senator who was after one of the classified balloon UAP briefings. And he came out and said, I think the American people can handle the truth and yada yada. Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're definitely sitting on a lot of stuff, and for some reason, they just do not want to divulge it. It's fascinating because even when we go to war, the first couple of Gulf wars, every war now, we have like a war room, and the press is briefed every day. And I mean, there's classified elements, I'm sure, but you're so much of war is open. We're embedding reporters with troops. But with this stuff, yeah, it is just like they do not want to touch it. And then
well, maybe they do. Maybe they do want to, but they've been told flat out no. And here's what will happen if you spill the beans.
well, that's what I wonder because yeah, it seems like I'm under if a few are controlling it all behind the scenes. But also I wanted to ask you this: is our government's obviously hiding a lot of stuff, but also I think the UAP or the UFOs, they seem to be wanting to hide as well. Why do you think they are? Because it seems like they could come out and they could also prompt disclosure. They could land on the White House lawn, or they could, hover over our cities, and be undeniable and too hard to hide for our government. Why do you think they don't do that? What do you think is their reason for the?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think it's been mischaracterized because they have provided enough evidence to convince any skeptic. They really honestly have. If you look at the history of this phenomena, you will see that they have. I would point to the Turkey footage where they
Yeah.
hovered from 2008, 7, 8, and 9 and provided indisputable footage, which has not been debunked.
But I mean,
And
why do you think they don't just like come down into you know what I mean, like the middle of the Super Bowl when Rihanna's playing the halftime show? A couple of
right. Well, they
folks.
did it to a soccer match in Italy.
Oh yeah,
40,000 people saw this. They did it in France in 1954, October. Spread all across the country, landing. The French government knows 100% this is real. They
I've
did it.
read that Cometa report. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, they did this in Mexico, 1991, during the solar eclipse over Mexico City. A craft hovered for hours. It was videotaped by 20 to 30 different people all over the city, triangulated. They know exactly how high up it was, what size. The Mexican government really had no choice but to say that this, we cannot identify this. And there's incident after incident after incident like this, waves of sightings. I would point to the Rua, Zimbabwe school landing in
Yes.
1994. That's one of over 100. I wrote a book on that phenomena alone, schoolyard UFO encounters, because there's the Westall case in 1966, Crestview Elementary, 1967, Hillsdale College, 1966. They hover for hours. There's 100 cases all over the world. They do put on displays. They have absolutely 100% shown themselves. They did go over the White House, probably would have landed on the White House lawn if we did not shoot them and vector jets after them. We gave them a very hostile reception. They know better, I think, than to disrupt society and pop everyone's balloon in a way that would violate laws of karma. It's up to us to accept them and recognize that they're real, and they've given everything we need to do that.
That's so interesting and awesome. That's really cool. We have about 10 minutes left here. I just want to ask you a few more questions. What is your favorite case? Do you have a favorite incident that you've researched?
Well, that I've personally researched probably would be, oh gosh, that's a real hard choice because there are some cases involving, individual contacts.
Yeah.
Like one, I just put out a book called Symmetry, a True UFO Adventure, about a witness by the name of Dolly Safran. That's probably my favorite contactee case because it's the most extensive case of contact I've ever had the privilege to research. In terms of a widespread incident, probably the Topanga Canyon UFO wave, because I ended up interviewing over 100 witnesses who saw activity over a period of 2 years, 92 to 94.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was photographed. There was landings, car chases.
Are you California based? Do you live here in?
I recently left California. I had to get out of the smog and the crowds
Yeah.
and the heat and
I live right by Topanga. Well, not right by it, but I live in Venice, California, and I love Topanga is my favorite place in the world.
yeah, that's where I grew up actually, for the
Oh,
most part, and had no idea it was a UFO hotspot, but it absolutely is. And there was a wave of sightings over there that left no doubt that this is a real phenomena. Uh,
yeah.
that was probably my favorite case. I mean, I was talking to the police, I was interviewing all kinds of people.
Oh, wow. That's so
Yeah.
cool. You have the coolest job ever. Uh,
I'm having fun.
yeah. What about, is there a scariest case? Have you interviewed or have you researched anything that was just terrifying or frightening, like an X file that was,
Oh gosh, not really. I mean, I don't find this phenomena fearful at all. I've certainly interviewed people who've had a little bit of a hard time, and because contact can be very, very scary.
I bet.
Uh, I mean, I know that firsthand from people I've talked to. I mean, one guy was a Marine officer, a tough guy. And I asked him to describe the ET he saw, and he started weeping. And I'm
Ooh,
like, oh my gosh, it's okay. Are you all right? And he's like, I'm fine. I'm fine. It's just, this brings up a lot of emotion. Uh, and he was really quite frightened by his face to face encounter with a reptilian humanoid. I honestly think he was a victim of my lab, military abduction.
yeah. Like
Uh,
Melinda Leslie.
yeah, I mean, he is as much said so. He worked at Camp Pendleton. They brainwashed him, they hypnotized him, they drugged him. It was a rough ride for him. So that when I hear something negative, that's often what it is. And while being taken on board a craft and physically examined can be frightening beyond belief, it's not nefarious in the least. I wrote a book called The Healing Power of UFOs, which basically documents some 300 plus cases of people who are healed. And that's the main purpose of people being pulled on board. It really is. And I can tell you, researchers across the world, pretty much every major researcher out there that I've been able to find has multiple cases of healings. I mean, I've got good reason, concrete examples of why this is not a nefarious phenomena, why there's nothing to be afraid of. Yeah, some people do have a hard time with it. I get that. It can be very scary, but they're not here to hurt us.
That's so interesting. That's fascinating. And I wanted to apologize if you hear a lot of banging there's construction next door. It had died down the past few days, but I guess of course when I started recording, they started back up again. They're building just a building across the street here. So if you hear
I
and I
don't
will,
hear anything. I don't.
oh, that's good. I've been trying to like press the mute button. And always wanted to ask you this as well as I'm sure you've heard, the government has referred to sort of an overarching sort of, they call it the phenomenon when dealing with UFOs, and they say that near death experiences, paranormal telekinesis, ghosts, they believe are somehow related, all part of the same, as they call it, phenomenon, same part of the same grouping as UFOs. um why do you think that is? Do you have any insights through your research how those different fields are seemingly connected to UFOs?
Oh, yeah, I sure do. Because I have researched the paranormal up, down, and sideways, near death experiences, astral projection, precognition, demonic phenomena, angelic phenomena. Bigfoot, you name it, I have looked into it. And yeah, there are some very interesting parallels and some commonalities, but these are 100% separate phenomena. I, I absolutely disagree with researchers who are trying to lump this all under one umbrella, call it
Huh.
an intelligence that masquerades and manifests in different ways. That's not what's going on at all. The UFO phenomena, as I think is classically described, with metallic craft with portholes and landing and leaving landing traces and taking people on board, is exactly that. They're extraterrestrial. They are beings like us. more like us than different. That
I
has
agree.
nothing to do with near-death experiences. The
What do
only,
you? Oh, sorry.
yeah, I think what we're looking at is a commonality because the contactees are often profoundly psychic. And this can happen as a result of contact. And people will start having an enormous amount of paranormal experiences. And it goes both ways, because often ETs will contact people who are already psychic. So we see people who are having near-death experiences suddenly being contacted, or people being contacted suddenly experiencing astral projection and healing and telepathy and precognition and past life recall and so forth. I mean, people, I hear it all the time. Someone will have contact and suddenly they have mediumistic abilities or Reiki. So yeah, there's some commonalities and bleed throughs, but these are separate phenomena. A Bigfoot is a Bigfoot. A ghost is a ghost. And the research on that, if you look into it, is pretty clear. I mean, Bigfoot has been around forever. So have ghosts.
Yeah.
And
So you
these,
sort of disagree from the say like Leslie Keene or Diana Pasulka. I don't know if you've read any of their stuff where they would
oh
talk,
yeah,
and that's fascinating. That's so cool to. I can't get enough of this topic of the subject. The paranormal is so fascinating. Yeah, because they it seems like there's some correlations between like abductions or time stops. Or sometimes I don't know if you've heard of like the hitchhiker effect, like you were describing. Sometimes
sure.
people refer to it as that as time will stop in other instances or seem to slow down or whatever. Um, yeah. Has the government ever contacted you, having done so many research and talked to so many people? Um, have they ever reached out to you? Or would you ever be interested if they did reach out to you through some of these hearings, investigations for your sort of input?
No, they haven't reached out to me. I have received what I perceive to be a threatening phone call or two
Oh,
uh,
wow.
and I feel like all UFO researchers, and for that matter, contactees, are being watched. No, I'm not sure I would really want to speak before Congress. I just don't trust them. I don't know how useful it would be. I don't want to give a flat out no answer because one never knows. It could be a good opportunity to reach a lot of people, but no, I'm not encouraged by how our government is handling this. I don't want to play with these guys. They're nasty.
Yeah. Don't get me audited. I'm gonna get IRS listening to me. Well, Preston, thank you so much. We're just about out of time, and just thank you so much. You were my first guest. This was my first episode. I've been a huge fan of yours forever. I watch every YouTube video you make. You have so many books, I can't keep up. You're like a one-man library, but I will read them all. And I hope you have the best day ever, man. Thank you so much.
True pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Colin. I appreciate it.
Cool. Talk again soon. Have a great day, man. Thank you.
Thank you.